And in comparison to this, how is the transformative power of the internet in these countries?
Well, it depends on the country, and this is a lot of.
Let's take Senegal or Iran.
Well, this is what my research touches on, which is that I think people have this idea. You know, we talk about transformation, we talk about catalyzation, we talk about an active effect, and I think that there's this kind of myth that the internet or mobile phones or any kind of technology.
Or Twitter in Iran during the Green Revolution.
Well, that's a whole nother thing, but I'll get to that in a moment if you want. But I think any type of technology, I think there's this idea that those technologies are an actor that actually have in and of themselves a particular role to play, and they themselves, the internet, mobile phones, cause a particular effect. And in my book, I'm trying to show that that's not, it's more complicated than that, it's more interesting than that. What happens is that, because if that were true, you would expect that the effect would be the same in most places, but it turns out it's not. It turns out that when the internet arrives in a particular country at a particular time, it combines with the political and the social and the cultural realities of that place at that time to then create something new, right? Which is why you have different types of effects in different places. That's why, for example, South Korea, and not Germany and not the United States and not anywhere else, is the world's most wired country on the planet, right? There's a reason why Skype, the completely transformative piece of software that allows people to call around the world that I use all the time, came from Estonia and not from Silicon Valley, you know. There's a reason why the internet was useful for people to, for dissidents and political reformists in Iran to use as a means to speak out against the government.
Did you do research on the reasons? So what are the reasons? For example.
Yes?
Yeah.
For example, what? Iran?
Iran or Senegal or just
well,
one?
I think the reason. Well, I mean, I think the reasons, like I said, it has to do with what's happening in the country at the time that the internet arrives and grows. So, in the case of Iran, Iran has been online since 1992. Actually,
they're very much advanced. Nobody knows it. Actually.
Right, and Iran today has the second highest internet penetration rate in the Middle East, second only to Israel. So roughly around 35%. So 3.5 out of 10 Iranians are on the internet. And as the internet grew in Iran over the 90s and early 2000s, this was also the same time period when you had a relatively moderate government in power in Tehran. You had a liberalization of the Iranian political world, relatively speaking. You had this President Khatami, who was president from 1997 to 2005. And while he was president, he expanded like no other president before or after has done so, expanding civil society, allowing more newspapers to open, allowing more books to be published, allowing more non-profit civil society organizations to be organized. And so at the same time, the internet was a means for those things to flourish. But then what happened is other parts of the government, first of all, his government was voted out of office, the Islamic conservatives were voted into parliament, and there was a crackdown, and the government itself began to co-opt some of these same channels. As early as, I mean, we were talking about this so-called Twitter revolution and so forth, but people forget that in Iran, the Iranian government has been reacting to what's been happening on the Iranian internet as far back as 2000, 10 years ago, where they were, the first instance that I've discovered of this was where they were going after a dissident cleric who passed away about a year ago. His name was Ayatollah Montazeri, and he spelled his name with an I at the end, and his website was montazeri.com. But the government set up a website called Montazeri with a Y.com, and they were basically cyber squatting him. They were setting up a fake website to trick people to go to this other website, and it didn't exactly work, but it shows that there's a level of sophistication and a level of complexity and a level of understanding that I think a lot of people don't realize.
So, if you would summarize, and this would be at least my last question, because I think we have to go up again. what are the major takeaways from your books, the major findings?
Well, I think that the main point, like I said, is that we can't oversimplify the internet in terms of this transformative capability. There's this idea that, you see it in projects like One Laptop Per Child, right? There's this idea that if only we could bring the internet to rural Senegal or Ghana or Indonesia or Brazil, then everything would be great. The kids would learn better, the teachers would teach better, the politicians would politic better, everything would be better, right? And I just think that that's such an oversimplification, and if only we could bring the internet to Iran, to China, to Cuba, to Burma, to North Korea, to these repressive countries that don't have political freedom, once people get on the internet, then they will see that political Western liberal democracy is great, and everything will be fantastic. And we see this in American government policy. Hillary Clinton gave a speech about a year ago on something called 21st Century Statecraft, and said that the U.S. was going to defend human rights on the internet around the world. How exactly they're going to do that, I'm not really sure, but they say they're going to. Some countries in Europe, particularly the Netherlands and France, have taken a similar stance. But again, I don't think it's that simple. I don't think you can just say, well, we're going to stand up for human rights on the internet. We're gonna say, Google, you can't follow China's laws. You have to stand up for a set of human rights standards. And this idea that that the internet itself is this kind of actor, that is this kind of transformative thing. The internet is a tool like anything else. It can be used for good. It can be used to, find out all kinds of great information, to educate people, sure. But it can also be used, just like any tool, as a weapon. It can be used to disseminate propaganda, to disseminate hate speech, to disseminate terrorism, to disseminate anything like that. And I think that that's something that gets lost in this type of rhetoric.
Thanks a lot. Hope to read the book soon. What's the name again?
It's called The Internet of Elsewhere. You can read about it online on my website, internetofelsewhere.com.
Okay.